This is Jolovan Wham. He's a civil rights activist in Singapore, a country so wealthy, so civilized, and so modern that many Americans might feel right at home there. This is also Jolovan Wham, holding a cardboard sign with a happy face, behavior that got him dragged into court and threatened with a nearly $4,000 fine by Singapore's government, which is a reason that Americans might not feel right at home there. Because when it comes to free speech, America is built a little different than pretty much everywhere else. The story of America is, in many ways, the story of free speech. The dueling essays that shaped our Constitution, the abolitionist writers who challenged the nation to live up to its founding principles and end slavery, the rousing protests of the civil rights movement, and these days, guys with anime avatars who have very strong views on Bitcoin. But because we're so used to these rights, we can forget that when they were enshrined in the First Amendment in 1791, they were far from the norm. The world's first legal protections for freedom of the press had been enacted in Sweden less than 25 years earlier. The first prohibition on censorship in Denmark came only a few years after that. In most of the world, you were free to say only whatever your rulers were comfortable with you saying. And you can see why other countries might have looked at the US and said, what? You're just gonna let any lunatic say anything they want? I mean, you can imagine all the ways that could go wrong. Okay, to be fair, probably no one imagined this one. But in fact, letting people say whatever they want is pretty close to what we did. Yes, there are a few exceptions. Free speech doesn't protect things like fraud, defamation, or inciting crime or violence. And free speech only protects you from being punished for what you say by the government. In other words, the First Amendment keeps you from going to jail for saying something stupid. It doesn't keep you from having to sleep on the couch for it. But apart from those modest limits, Americans are pretty much free to speak their minds on any topic they please, whether their thoughts are profound or something less than profound. And that's what's led scholars to say that the right to free speech in America is closer to absolute than in any other country in the world. Why choose a standard this permissive? One of the most important reasons is that good ideas don't always start out as popular ideas. After all, it took nearly 80 years between the adoption of the Constitution and the abolition of slavery. How much longer would it have taken had abolitionists not been allowed to speak out? We know that's precisely what some slaveholders in the South wanted, because some of the region's postmasters would intercept and destroy abolitionist literature, with the approval of President Andrew Jackson. And the story of most great crusades in American history are the same. Women's right to vote, the civil rights movement, these campaigns succeeded because people had the right to spend decades trying to persuade their fellow Americans, even though plenty of politicians tried to limit that freedom in defiance of the First Amendment's promise. Which underscores a critical point when we're thinking about free speech. Any power we give to the government, we are, in reality, giving to the people in government. Which means anytime we think about giving Washington more power to restrict speech, we ought to ask, how would I feel if my least favorite politician was the one deciding which thoughts could land me in jail? Because chances are that at some point, your least favorite politician will be in power. Now, on first blush, it seems like Americans understand this principle. Polling has shown that 91% of us say free speech is a very or extremely important right. Another 7% say it's at least moderately important. As for that last 2%, they're just trying to get home. But here's where things start to break down. While Americans are extremely likely to say, yes, we believe in free speech, they're also very likely to say, but not for that guy. 85% of Democrats, for instance, told pollsters that protests about racial injustice, like those of Black Lives Matter, were legitimate expressions of First Amendment rights, while only 56% of Republicans said the same. 73% of Republicans said that protesting against the certification of the 2020 election was a legitimate exercise of free speech, while only 39% of Democrats did, which is a little bit of a problem, because in America, free speech is a right we give to everybody. It's not based on whether your views are popular or unpopular, right or wrong. It's based on the fact that you're a person, and that being able to speak your mind is fundamental to human dignity. So, if you're willing to make exceptions to free speech for people you don't like, well, that's no longer free speech. To see what this can look like in practice, we can look at other countries. Not authoritarian dictatorships, but other liberal democracies like ours, where you might be surprised by how these rights can be curtailed. Jolovan Wham, the protester in Singapore we introduced you to earlier, he was holding up that happy face sign to support a couple of climate activists, and his protest lasted a few seconds, just long enough to take that picture. How did that land him in court? Because in Singapore, there's only one single spot in the country where you're allowed to protest without first getting permission from the government, and it's in a park that was closed at the time for COVID. In Germany, anyone who publicly reviles the religion or ideology of others in a manner suited to causing a disturbance of the public peace can face up to 3 years in prison. In Sweden, publicly expressing contempt for an ethnic group can get you 2 years behind bars. In England, a 20-year-old was arrested and charged with a hate crime after jokingly using a slur at a soccer match, a standard that, were it applied in America, would lead to the arrest of the entire city of Philadelphia. When you look at these international examples, you understand precisely why the First Amendment is so valuable. Yes, America extends free speech rights to ideas many of us regard as crazy, foolish, or downright immoral. But we do it because we think the only thing more dangerous is allowing politicians to decide what counts as crazy, foolish, or immoral. Is it a hard standard to live by? Of course. It requires a lot of patience. But it's also the standard that allows us to pursue truth, to challenge authority, and to live in a society with freedoms our ancestors could only have dreamed of. Even if it means we have to put up with this guy.